Welcome to my show, simply entitled Women Influencers. I am Veronica, CCIM, founder and CEO of Capstack Commercial, a commercial real estate company serving the greater Orlando area. Today's guest is Josie Correa. From the nonprofit world to the construction industry to serving as the next president of Crew Miami, Josie's golden nuggets of wisdom will be sure to inspire. Please don't forget to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe below. I welcome your comments and please share with someone who can benefit from this podcast. Well, hi, Josie. How are you today?
Great, Veronica. Thank you so much for having me here. I feel privileged and honored to be part of your podcast and be here this afternoon speaking to your audience.
Well, likewise, I am so blessed to have someone like you be a guest in my show. So thank you and welcome. If you don't mind, I just want to jump right in. I am so
Sure.
curious about your story. Tell us how you grew up in your environment and how you got to where you are today.
So I am the daughter of Cuban immigrants. My parents came to Miami from Cuba in 1960. My father was a banker in Cuba and had to start all over in Miami, waiting on tables until he finally was able to get another position at a bank and then started working his way up. And I say that because I think my father was probably the biggest influence in my life growing up. My mother was a stay-at-home mom, did an incredible job of raising us, along with my father, of course. But I think the work ethic that I have and the fact that I saw my dad get up, every morning, super early in the morning, get to work. He used to say, I need to set the example and I need to be the first one at the bank. And this is when he was a president of a bank. So
Wow.
we grew up with that mindset. I did go to private school my whole life. Thankfully, my parents were able to do that. They wanted us to go to Catholic school. So I went to a Catholic school my whole life, even through high school. And then I got an associate's degree in business from Miami-Dade Community College. I spent a year traveling and learning French in France, in Paris.
Wow,
Spent a year
really?
there. Yeah, back in 1985, so a long time ago.
How
Um,
wonderful.
but that also fueled my curiosity for other cultures, traveling, which is probably one of the biggest reasons why I work, right, is so that I can now, as I get older, really take time and travel and get to see many parts of the world. So that's kind of in a nutshell, a little bit of my background. And then, then started my career pretty much in 1990. I started with an organization. It was a nonprofit. It served almost like a chamber of commerce for downtown Miami, and this was in 1990. I don't know, a lot of cities, I think in the country around that time of the world, was very, a lot of the downtowns were very neglected. Most
Sure.
people had left and they had started living in the suburbs. They didn't really care much about their downtown. So there was always a need for an organization like the Downtown Miami Partnership for, somebody to take care of downtown. I had a very wonderful mentor. I was doing the job of the assistant director for a couple of years. And in comes this gentleman and he says, you know what? You've been doing all the work. Why don't you move into the director position? I know you can do it. The other person wasn't working out. And I said, I don't know if I could do it, but if you believe in me, I'm going to give it a shot. And sure enough, I spent 23 years there running that organization.
Wow,
Yeah,
amazing. Isn't that just fantastic when you actually get noticed and someone opens the door for you and before you know it, it's 26 years later and you were the
exactly.
head of that organization. Oh, I
Yeah,
can't wait to hear more.
yeah. And I always say that that was kind of like my master's degree because it was a small organization and with a lot of small nonprofits, you basically wear every hat that there is.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? We had to apply for grants because a lot of the monies that we got to run the organization was through grant monies. I had to do membership recruitment because we had to have members. If not, who were we representing? We
Right.
had to do lobbying. So, the community wanted something. We were the ones that would go before the city commission and say, hey, we need more stop signs. We need more this. our sidewalks aren't being cleaned. So we were the advocates for that community before our city officials. We also did some real estate, which is a little bit of where I got that real estate bug, because developers or property owners or business owners would come to us and would say, we want to open up in downtown, but we don't know where to go. Downtown is big. We've got all these different streets. There's all these different almost communities within the community.
Yeah.
And so they would come to us and we would give them guidance. So we would consult with them and say, look, you want to open up a beauty salon. Well, you've got all these residential buildings here. The most logical place is around here.
Right.
That kind of information. We would also take information that was put together by the Beacon Council, which is the economic development arm of the county. We would also put together information that came from the Downtown Development Authority. We would put that all together in a nice package, almost like an offering
Sure.
memorandum, but on behalf of downtown, and showing all of the different properties that were going to be built in the area and where those nods were, right? So that people would look forward to, potentially investing and buying properties in these areas. Another thing we did also was events. So I had to do a lot of events because at that time it was the business community and there was people starting to live in downtown, and those two wanted to come together. And the only way we could think of doing that was to put together events where these two communities could come together, network, and hopefully do business together, right?
Wow.
So it
Yeah.
was a great training ground for, really everything that you could imagine in running an organization and running a company, I had to do.
Wow.
Financials, everything.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
was, I call it like my master's degree in
Yeah.
business because I really had to do it all at that point.
Right.
And after being there for 23 years, I kind of saw the writing on the wall. Some of the grants were drying out. There were things that weren't going the way they should. And somebody came to me, a relationship I had, and said, you would be great to start working for the Florida Retail Federation. Florida Retail Federation was starting to move a little bit outside of Tallahassee, where they did lobbying, and go more towards the local level and try to help the businesses here with different products and services that they offered.
Sure.
So I said, well, I'll interview. Again, a relationship was the one that connected me. And I interviewed for the position and I got the job. And
Awesome.
yeah, and I spent 5 years there, also doing a lot of business development, a lot of just meeting with people, getting to know the community, going to events and representing the Florida Retail Federation. And just, I call it sort of planting seeds,
Yeah. Absolutely.
where you're meeting people, you're following up with them, you're sending them an article, you're doing things to kind of stay in contact with them, of course, with the whole idea of building that relationship, but also hopefully, going down the track of doing business with them someday. So they brought in a new executive director, and he said, we no longer want to do any work in Miami. We just want to do the lobbying that we do in Tallahassee.
Oh.
And I was laid off. And that was very unexpected. It happened from like one day to another. And I was like, now what do I do? Where do I go from here? Um, and, that's where I probably one of the biggest challenges that I had in my career was that it was, do I stay in nonprofit management, which is what I had been doing basically for those 5 years and those about 28 years, or do I pivot and go into another direction? And I was 54 years old, so I was no spring chicken, and it was a difficult position to be in.
Yeah.
Um, but I had a friend who was also kind of in the real estate industry. Well, she was in the real estate industry. She was working for a general contractor and was doing business development and government relations. And she was like, Josie, you know how to do business development. You need to learn a little bit about construction, and I can teach you what I think you're going to need in order to at least get you to the point where you can, come in and be of value to that company. And I want to take a step back because I forgot to mention that also with the Downtown Miami Partnership, we ran a business improvement district. And through that district, we did what we call facade improvements,
Mhm.
where we were basically going to property owners and business owners and offering them these grants so that they could do rehab to the exterior of their building. So small construction projects in comparison to what I'm doing today in my current job, but it gave me enough knowledge that I was able to really pick up very easily some of these things that my friend taught me so that I could get to that next step where was, starting to apply for a business development position within a general contractor.
Sure. And you are now with JWR Construction in
Correct.
Miami, correct?
Yes,
Oh, that's awesome. And you are doing business development for
that's
them.
exactly right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful. It's really amazing to me how if we only paid attention, right, to the different things that we get from the different experiences that we have over the years, and you're a best example of that. You can actually very quickly pivot into a different direction when you're faced with a challenge. And so I want to
Correct.
go into that question about a challenge and how you overcame it. I think you mentioned it a little bit, how you were all of a sudden in this position where you had to rethink your future. So tell us a little bit about that challenge and how you overcame it.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, it was, I was 54 years old. I had to decide, am I going to continue down the road of doing nonprofit management? And there were quite a bit of opportunities in that regard. I also looked at, a couple of other items, but I also thought a little bit about what is, Miami and South Florida really strong in. And obviously real estate is huge. Construction, I mean, if you just drove around, Miami back even 6 years ago when this happened, I was like, there's cranes everywhere.
That's right.
And I said, so, you know, a logical pivot would be to go into, construction and to go into the real estate industry. Luckily, I had a great relationship. And I keep saying that because that's one of the things that I think has helped me the most in everything I've ever done, where I was able to look to a friend who was in a similar business and basically sit down with her, and she coached me. She said, okay, I'm going to ask you some questions. I'm going to teach you like what it is that an interview could look like when you're in that position, because she was essentially in the same position. And I just want to make sure that if they ask you any construction related stuff, you have the right answers. And so we spent a couple of weeks, and then I started interviewing with general contractors. And I interviewed with two general contractors. And with the second general contractor that I interviewed, which was also referred to me by a friend, I interviewed and I got the job.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And you've been with JWR for how long?
So I was 3 years with that previous company, and now I've been 3 years with JWR.
That's
And I
amazing.
want to talk a little bit about how when I got to well, really when I got to that other company, I still had kind of that nonprofit bug to a certain degree,
Mhm.
and that wanting to help people and wanting to be part of an organization that is there to improve our community and to help and network. I really felt that that was something that I was good at and that I liked, and
Oh,
that's what
wonderful.
led me to Crew Miami.
Oh, yes, yes. Crew is such a great organization,
It
commercial real
totally
estate
is.
women, in case
Yes.
our audience does not know what Crew is. Again, it's
Commercial real
commercial.
estate women.
That's
And
right.
it's a global organization these days with chapters in almost every major city in the US.
Well, I wanted to kind of touch a little bit on what you said about helping others. And obviously, you have a heart for the community. So I wanted to ask you about influence. If there was one thing you're most proud of where you had made an impact and an outcome, what would that be?
So I think one of the things that I do the best and one of the things that I am recognized for, first of all, is giving selflessly, just giving and helping people. And how do I do that? And connecting people. I'll meet with somebody and right away it's like, who can I connect this person? How can I help this person, to connect with somebody, because I may not be the person that's going to give them a deal. I may not be the person that's going to be able to, you know, um, it's not a direct line, right, between me and them, what they're doing and what I do necessarily, but who can introduce them to that can help them and can potentially be a business
Right. And
associate or a
and
business
I
referral.
I love that. You know why? Because and we hear it often, but I'm telling you, it's not practiced that much. Where you give so much selflessly, and
And
you know,
and you know what?
it
And
comes
you
back
you
tenfold.
get it back threefold.
Yeah, tenfold, I say. That's
Absolutely.
wonderful. So let
Yeah.
me ask you, if there was one piece of advice that you could give to our audience today, what would that be?
That would be build a network of strong relationships. As
Great.
simple as that. Those relationships are going to help you with your current business. They're going to help you at a moment where you're looking to pivot to another career potentially. They're going to help your children when they're looking for jobs or whatever it may be. Or, it just building good relationships and building that strong network can help in so many ways that I cannot tell you how valuable that's been to me in my life. I think I shared with you earlier that every position and every job that I have ever had was because somebody referred me to that company. I interviewed and I got the job.
Right. And you're a great example of when you just build strong relationships, perhaps when the going is good, but those are the same relationships that are going to help you when the going is not so good, right?
Right.
And that's where it becomes so valuable, right? Not just to them because you're giving selflessly to them, but to you because it does come back tenfold.
It does 100%.
Wow. What a
Yeah.
great story. I'm so inspired by your story, and
Oh,
I know
thank
you're
you.
going to be the president of Crew Network of Miami. Am I correct in that?
Correct. Peru,
Yeah.
Miami.
Next year, and I'll be the president of the CCIM Central District. So we'll
Amazing.
be leading our organizations together next year. So that's super exciting for me. Well, we've
Yes.
come to the point of our interview where I get to pass on the mic to you and you get to ask me a question.
So, Veronica, if you weren't in commercial real estate doing what you're doing today, what other job or what other career are you passionate about and would have gone down that road potentially?
Well, thank you for that question. And let me tell you, that's one that stumped me because because I'm so focused on commercial real estate. I really love it. And I've been doing it for 10 let me see, 20 years, 10 years,
Wow.
20 years in real estate, 10 years in commercial real estate. And it's been very good to me. But if there was another career that I
Hmm.
would probably consider, and it's funny because I've already shared this with you earlier before I hit the record button. My father was a CPA attorney in the Philippines. He held some very high positions in our
Amazing.
in our government. And my sisters, now that we're, in our 60s, would sometimes tell me, you should have been an attorney like dad. So I think that that was something that probably I would have considered
Hmm.
if somehow rather the path was there for me. I'm an immigrant. So I moved from the Philippines when I was already 27 years old. So
Wow.
I had to rebuild my whole network. And so just
Amazing.
that took a lot of effort and a lot of time and resources for me to be able to build my local network. And of course, thankfully, I have a great family. So I don't think I was really thinking about, that sort of avenue to
Hmm.
go into law school. But I probably would have, and I probably would have been good at it. So
I'm sure
so
you would
that's
have.
that's a very interesting question. Nobody has ever asked me that. So I thank you. Well, Josie, this has been such a fun time for me. I totally
You.
appreciate you being our guest here today at our podcast. So, before we go, I want to thank you for your wisdom and for sharing your story. And if you have some parting words for our audience.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll go back to, that building relationships and commitment and being consistent with what you do. I think that's been sort of my secret sauce of just being consistent and I call it, like I said, being pleasantly persistent and just staying on top of your connections and continuing to network with them and being a resource for them so that in the long run, when they're thinking of someone, you're going to be one of the first people they think about. So from a business perspective, obviously that's amazing. And that's been very successful for me. So that's my parting wisdom, I guess,
Oh
in this.
yeah.
And
Well, you're going to be the perfect president for Crew
thank
because
you.
that's exactly what they are. They're a
Yeah.
network, and
It's about
man,
networking and
yeah,
connecting and, connecting the
and
dots
giving.
between one person and another so that we can all eventually succeed. And we at Crew believe in succession planning. So we look a lot to our younger girls that are coming into the industry to learn from us and be able to one day be leaders and be in our position.
Oh, wonderful. Well,
Mhm.
I want to tell you how excited I am that I have you on the show. And I'm sure the audience just took away so much from this episode. So, Josie, I hope to run into you in Miami
I hope so
whenever
too.
I go there, and I'm sure that we'll cross paths again. But in the meantime, I
Absolutely.
want to thank you again, and I wish you all very best in your career and
Thank
your
you.
personal life, and of course for Crew.
It was a complete honor for me. Thank you.